Thank you for staying with us. Protests have become an essential mechanism for addressing deep-rooted social, political, and economic issues. They also play a major role at addressing some issues, expressing rather social-political dissatisfaction, economic grievances, and other issues. Now, protests have, in Nigeria, we have had several protests ranging from the Aba Women Riot of 1929, Occupy Nigeria of 2012, for the removal of youth subsidy, NSAS 2020 for police violence, and we cannot forget Ali Must Go of 1978. Now, in a democratic system like Nigeria, citizens have the freedom to communicate their concerns through legal means such as protests. But it's, however, crucial to understand the complexities surrounding protests and provide actionable recommendations for mitigating conflict, fostering collaboration, and driving positive change. Well, understanding this movement is vital as they have profound implications for the safety, stability, and prosperity of nations. So, joining us via Zoom from London is CEO Trans Intelligence and Security Solutions Limited, Timitokwe Olodo. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Great. Now, like we rightly pointed out, that protests have played significant roles in Nigeria's landscape, and we mentioned some of the protests that we have witnessed over the years, beginning with that of 1929, talk about the Aba Women Riot. And then we had Ali Must Go of 1978, and then we also had the Occupy Nigeria of 2012, and most recently that of NSAS 2020 against police violence. One would say that we have evolved with regards to how we address issues and how even these protests happens. But from your perspective, talk to us as a security analyst, what you have seen with regards to this protest and how they have impacted our political landscape.
Once again, thank you for having me. We've noticed a shift in the way protest is being held. Some people have decided to sit at home, like we have in the southeast of Nigeria, and that's another form of protest. And if protests are not managed properly, whether they are online or offline, they could be hijacked. And that was what happened, sadly, during the protest, the NSAS protest that you clearly highlighted, that it was hijacked. But, of course, government did what was necessary, organized a jury, a kind of a hearing, to listen to people's grievances, and people were compensated that needed to be compensated. Never happened anywhere else in West African region. So we must give kudos to the government for that. But is that enough? No, it is not. As we speak today, we are witnesses and beneficiaries of the dividends of democracy, because the military were kicked out through protest within the country and out of the country. And our current president was one of those people that actually put his life at risk, traveled, but had to go on exile in order for us to be able to enjoy the dispensation that we're enjoying right now. So protest is good, and there's nothing wrong in citizens exercising their right. There's a difference between protest and riot, and what we want is a situation where government and citizen could have that discussion to be able to express their concerns in line with the Constitution, and for government to respond to those protests, like Mr. President have been saying, that I feel you, I feel my people. And that's what people want to know. They don't only want to see the feeling, but they also want to see the action being taken, which we have seen in this government. Of course, we're expecting more, and we'll always expect more.
Interesting perspective. But others will say that while we go to protest, there are a lot of issues that have also been recorded, like people dying. And the fact that you also mentioned that some also hijack this protest, this process of protesting and expressing their grievances by the nationals of several people within an organization or a nation. if you look at against the backdrop of NSAS, some said it was a success, others said it wasn't a success. If you look at the political angle, where former Osun State Governor Bisi Akonde in a recent interview, where he said that the NSAS protest was orchestrated to and targeted at the incumbent president of Nigeria, Bola Tinubu, to stop him politically and to also, break his back so that it won't be relevant when it comes to his contest for the presidency, but which didn't work at the end of the day. And then it was also sponsored by the opposition. But the oppositions have said, no, that's not correct. So how do you see the political dynamics to protesting? Do you think that is also the way to go? And how should we handle it?
You see, you've brought in a classic example of a situation that went out of hand. Initially, it was a protest against the police brutality, but it snowballed because it was not properly controlled. And one of the things for me as a security expert, somebody that works in this industry and that looks at how this thing happened, is that we're not looking at lessons learned, because there are always different narratives that come from protest. Why the normal citizens were expressing their concerns and occupying the toll gate, some people who have nothing to do with government decided that they're going to target people's businesses and carry TV. We all saw it. They were looting warehouses. I don't think those individuals have anything to do with political change or targeting a particular government or politician. Of course, there would be individuals, because we saw videos of people coming out of unmarked cars committing havoc. So, and this is where security comes in, because if there are conversations with people that are organizing peaceful protest, and where they're going is marked out, and police is using technology properly, then we will not have this problem. I was part of the Kent police, and during my time there, I was taught a lot of things about protest and other things. And I know that policemen will mix up with protesters, walk with them, laugh with them. In fact, in some places we've seen videos of them dancing with protesters. You mark out the place, you have gold control, you have silver control, you have bronze. I've never seen that in the Nigerian police approach to handling protest. What I see is, pushing out canals, and
well, some will disagree with you on that, because just last year there was the End Bad Governance protest, and some areas were marked, and we saw some policemen handing over pure water to the protesters in Lagos and some areas. That happened. But when we move over to some places like Abuja, we saw that it was infiltrated, and some persons came with weapons to attack some people. In fact, some of the leaders of the protest did not agree with the police for the designated areas. They say they wanted some areas of their own. And the various state governments said, no, we want you to stay here so we can manage it. That brings the other dynamics of police, the government, and the people themselves, how we can ensure we work together if we really want to protest, because the government showed at that time that they were ready to protect these people and allow them protest. But the protesters were insisting on having their way.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm not saying that policing of protest will go the way we want it at every time. But as I speak to you right now, if you go to the New York police webpage and you put in protest, there are what we call standard operating procedures that are there. I don't think you will see that on the Nigerian police, with all due respect. The bottom line is that you don't call people 1 or 2 days before if announce their protest and start telling them that you want to curtail the way in which they protest. This kind of engagement is ongoing. That's what we're talking about. It's about what we call policing by consent, not police force. We need to move away from this colonial approach to policing. We need to engage more. There are things that are happening. You just talked about incident that happened, in the newspaper, and you're talking about, the fact that, the unions want to protest toll gates. Now, those kind of situation, we don't need to wait until when they've announced the date. We could engage with them in those particular areas where we know that the toll gate is going to happen. Talk to the community, meet with the community, explain the government's perspective, because roads are not cheap, and we are all talking about the fact that we need, food on our table. So we need to find a way in which we could recoup some of the money back. It's just explanation, common sense approach to policing, a common sense approach to engaging with the people that want to hold protest. As we speak right now in the UK, there are certain areas you can never hold protests because it's been put into the law, and you will not even go there to hold protests. But there are places where you could hold protests, and there are people, even as we speak in a civilized environment, that even want to glue themselves to the floor. You will always have the bad elements in protest issues, but it's
so
about
is
how
that
you
your
manage it.
recommendation for Nigeria, to perhaps designate areas where protests can hold?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong in having areas where protests could hold. But not only that, left to me as a security person, I'll say, if you want to hold protests 1 or 2 days, yes, that's fine. The police will help you. If you want to hold protests for about 1 or 2 weeks, then you need to meet with the police. The police will give you their bill, and then you will pay for it. There's nothing wrong in that, because if we're policing football and we ask them to pay money, there's nothing wrong if you want to hold protest that will take away resources from very vital areas. Then you need to pay for it. There's nothing wrong with that, and we need to have that debate in a democratic environment.
Interesting stuff. So there are so many protests that have been mentioned even in this report. But I recall, yes, I want us to look at it from the international perspective, the dynamics of, yes, the international interference rather. We saw the yellow vests, is it 2019? We also saw the Arab Spring that actually culminated into the ousting and the killing of Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, and the foreign interference during the Obama regime, where they also confirmed that after the taking out of Muammar Gaddafi, Libya has never remained the same as we've seen. So when those who want something better, when those who want to change the government, or those who are demanding for their rights through protest, but some of these are being funded by the governments of international communities, how can we separate the good from the bad intention here?
Thank you so much, and it's good that you are bringing it back home, because on the street of Kano we saw people flying the Russian flag,
yeah,
and we knew exactly what happened in Niger, which is our neighboring country, where French were kicked out, the Russian flag flew there, and the government was overturned. We do not want the militarization of protest in Nigeria, and that's the reason why we need to engage more. Unfortunately, we also saw children, minors, collapsing, on the floor of our court, which we don't want. And you also saw what happened in the UK, where children took on the streets, started protesting, and then they were arrested. But the children commissioner in the UK got involved to ensure that those kids got their right. And those are the kind of proactive approach that we need to adopt. We don't want foreign intervention in what we do, whether election coming in 2027, because there will be people out there as we speak that want to disrupt elections, and there are people that want to disrupt the political order that is going on right now. We don't need that. What we need is more engagement, but we need the police to use more technology in their engagement, because in doing that, they will be able to differentiate between the good people and the bad people. And you could also use common sense to explain to the good people that your riot could be hijacked. If you decide to go for 10 days, we could support you for 2 days in a designated environment, and government need to engage with these people. But we have seen throughout that government have been engaging. We have to be very clear about that. When the NSAS riot happened, government engaged. When the end governance process happened, government engaged by even setting up a youth event, or planning to put together a youth engagement process. So that is government engagement. We're not saying government is going to engage 100% on all issues, because we all have different views on issues. But what is important is that both government, both businesses and both the protesters need to understand where one person's right, starts is where another person's right ends, and we need to ensure that we're good neighbors and we are making Nigeria a great place to live.
Interesting. Now, still talking on this matter of financing or funding protests from external forces, we saw that the steps that was taken by the Nigerian government was to freeze certain bank accounts as of last year when they noticed that there were money inflows from certain persons outside the country into certain accounts. And that raised eyebrows in Nigeria. A lot of people started speaking, asking why are these bank accounts being frozen? And the government, I think, spoke with regards to why it took that step. But the matter here is the matter of trust. How do we balance it in terms when we're also talking about intentions, where we are seeing external influence and then people saying, no, government, you are going in the extreme, you are stifling us from speaking, the civil space is shrinking, but government is seeing that there are security issues here. How do we strike a balance where there's seemingly transparency, there's strategic communication, that everyone understands what is going on, and there is trust?
You see, like I mentioned earlier, and thank you again for bringing up this, because we know that the diaspora are also getting involved in sponsoring, activities in the country, either for good or for bad. And we know what is happening in the Southeast, and we know that there is foreign influence there. There's money coming out from outside the country, and the government is right, to freeze an account where there are activities that are illegal, that is contrary to our constitution. It is for those individuals, because we live in a civilized and democratic society, for them to go to a court of a court of law to protest against the freezing of their account and to provide reasonable reason why such money should be in their account. There's nothing wrong with that. Government has to do what it needs to do to protect life and property as enshrined in the constitution. And everybody also have a right to protest when they are unsatisfied with situations, but there must be a balance. We must ensure that even the diasporas need to know that there are certain things they must not get involved in, because if they do, they will end up like the gentleman in Finland who I believe has been arrested now and waiting to be extradited to Nigeria because he's been funding, a protest in an illegal way. And there's anything to do with illegal engagement must not be tolerated. The same way with the NSAS, we know some people also sponsored it, either for good or for bad. Those that sponsored it for bad will have to answer to the authorities, and there's nothing wrong with that, and they could have their day in court. I don't have any problem with that.
Interesting stuff. So, quoting from your report, you also said that these protests often lead to economic losses, such as that of $1 billion in damages during the Nigeria's NSAS protest and the $3.4 billion in damages during South Africa's July 2021 protest. And you would also recall that was it last year, 2024, where there was a protest, the NLC shut down the national grid, causing a lot of problems in hospitals where you have people died and some other disruptions to the Nigeria's economy. Do you think the long-term benefit of protests justifies the economic disruptions that these may cause, for instance, a Nigerian nation?
No, there's no justification for it. And that's the reason why we need to engage with people that are involved in protests. Like you rightly highlighted from Trans report, which looked at 2014 to 2024, which is a 10-year, intensive analysis of protests. We saw billions were lost, and it doesn't just affect large businesses; it affect, small, medium businesses and people that rely on daily income. And we know that Nigeria, for example, has over 100 people, that are living below the poverty line on $1, less than $1 a day. So protests disrupt economy. and protests could have impact. We know what happened in Lagos. We know all the buses that were lost. That's taxpayers' money. Whichever way you want to see it, we have to replace it. That's money that could have been spent, feeding our kids in school, putting, fixing good roads. So economic loss is not good for any nation or for any state or for any town. And that's the reason why government must engage and security services must engage. One of the things we found with our report is it's not just the economic loss. Now, when you lose a member of a family, there is an impact economically on the family, on children that do not have their father or have their brothers or have their sisters. 254,000 people lost their life across Africa from 180 recorded protests, which are the major ones. We're not talking of the little ones. We're talking of the ones that are recorded, like the ones you just highlighted. And we know that political protests alone on its own represented 83,000 casualties. 83,000. That's a lot of people that died and a lot of businesses that were lost. So one of the things we are saying is that government needs to start engaging with protesters. Protesters also need to see have come with trust onto the table. When you are talking about holding protest, which area do you want to hold the protest? What kind of businesses are there? Businesses also need to be engaged so that they could lock up their shop or and ensure that they do not lose millions of goods worth that they spent money to buy, and people do not have to face the economic hardship as a result of those protests.
All right, and still on this matter of engagement, you had mentioned earlier that the government actually engaged some of the protests that we mentioned earlier. So I'm wondering what more in terms of engagement you're talking about, as well as the security also. You talked about engagement. We recall that at the hashtag End Bad Governance protest, the police had requested that the protesters bring the names of the people who want to protest, but they refused. Now that has to do with trust. How do we build trust with security operatives and also ensure that they communicate strategically with these people? These are the two issues that I'd like for you to address in terms of recommendation.
Definitely, there's no doubt. Our trans report actually quite elucidate on those matters, but let me use this opportunity to explain. It's about proactive engagement. Police need to engage more. We just read in your news report, that there is dissatisfaction with the bringing in of toll gates. Now, what that means is that police operators or police hierarchy need to look at the stakeholders involved, need to do stakeholder mapping, identify the individuals involved, engage with them proactively about the protest or their dissatisfaction. The Ministry of Works need to engage, and that's the reason why they need to be training. It's not just about just saying we want to do this. There is something about communication. There's nothing wrong in even engaging TVC to help them with strategic engagement. They, putting up posters, explaining why is it that we're having this toll gate on federal roads. That's a project. They could have a communication campaign on that, explaining it to the community. It's not just the fact that, we want to do this and just put it out there, without engaging with the people. Engage with them. Police need more training. They need to use more, we know that the police have more than 4 helicopters. I've never seen Nigerian police use those helicopters during protests to record and actually have evidence of what is happening on the ground. We do that in the UK. Those are the kind of things we need to have a proactive approach. Look at the way Denmark handle protests. Look at the way Iceland handle protests. Look at the way Germany handle protests. There are examples out there. What we don't want now is a situation where everything breaks down before we start asking people to bring their name. There's no need for that in a matured place. Even in the UK, they don't ask people to bring their names. But protests must not be faceless. We don't need protests that are faceless. And when police sees that protest is moving away from normal protest to criminality, the police need to move quickly and arrest people that need to be arrested, to get warrants for people's house to be searched in order to make sure that weapons are not available in those kind of things. So it's about proactiveness. If people want to protest, they can engage with government and explain that we want to protest, and give government the opportunity to be able to change change their thoughts and policies. But also, government need to be proactive by ensuring that appropriate people with the right skill set are engaging with these individuals and not just talking that we are government want to do it, but engaging, effectively to ensure that they are able to put their message across.
I'm not sure whether we still have enough time to quickly squeeze in this question because.
You can.
Right, interesting. So very quickly, if you look at it on a larger scale, just like we mentioned, in Niger, in Mali, Burkina Faso, that have moved away from the ECOWAS bloc, and then the African continent, the African economies have been disrupted, and we've also seen different protests, like the current one going on in. There was one that was held yesterday in Washington D.C. By Palestinians, against the decision of Donald Trump. How do you think African economies can, better absorb the shock caused by these large-scale protests, so that we do we necessarily have to go into protest to start with, instead of us to come to roundtable where we come to finally resolve these matters?
No, we don't have to, and government need to be more proactive. When we see things happening around the world, we're living in a global village now. When things are happening, if Trump says he wants to relocate, the Palestinians and put them in a nice, beautiful house, as he says. I think it's about language. It's about what is he trying to communicate, and that might affect our Muslim brothers in Nigeria who are not happy with those kind of things. We've noticed it. It has happened before, in Kaduna, where an issue outside our country led to riots on the street of Kaduna, and many people were killed. We do not want that. We want more engagement. Is great Nigerian, great people. We want to talk about our local issues, deal with the issue of food on the table, electricity, constant electricity, proper water, our children being able to eat. Now we don't want 17 children dying in an almajiri school. We want better life for ourselves, and we don't want to transport crisis happening in other countries into our own country. So it's about engagement, government engaging sincerely, and where government gets it wrong, government could change their mind and say, yes, we think we got it wrong here, or we're willing to give space on this. It's about communication. That's where station like yours could, and your managers could actually engage with government to get some of those contracts about communication. Because if government do not communicate effectively, then they will lose the plot when it comes to pushing their agenda and pushing, the story that they need to sell out there to the Nigerian people.
CEO Trust Intelligence Security Solution, Temitope Olodo, thank you so much for your time on the program. Thank
you very much for having me.
You're welcome. All right, we'll take a break. When we return, we'll link up with Eshomo Moimodu and TJ Suadeoye in our Abuja studio. Stay with us.